You heard of climate change. Climate change describes a change in the average conditions, such as rainfall and temperature, in a region over a long period of time. NASA scientists have observed Earth's surface is warming, and many of the warmest years on records have happened in the past 20 years. Some examples of climate change are flooding. That's when there's too much water. Drought is when there's not enough water. Desertification is when fertile soil turns to desert, and rising coastal waters, which are due to melting glaciers. All these examples of climate change will cause the displacement of people, the displacement of animals, and the displacement of plants. All these climate changes are affecting the habitats and growth cycles of plants and animals, as well as affecting the weather patterns. Even though we see the negative side of climate changes, some organisms see a positive side to all these changes, and one set of those organisms is known as invasive species. What is an invasive species, you ask? Well, it's kind of like it sounds. It's a species of animals or plants that overtake a naturally occurring native ecosystem. The National Park Service defines an invasive species as an alien species whose introduction is likely to cause an economic or environmental harm or harm to human health. Well, how did these invasive species get here? In the past, many invasive plants were introduced for their use in agriculture or landscaping. Have you ever seen a patch of kudzu? A kudzu is a well-known invasive species that was introduced to the United States from Japan in 1883 as an ornamental plant used to shade porches in the southeast. It was also brought to use to prevent erosion during the Dust Bowl drought of the 1930s. Since then, however, kudzu has become known as the vine that ate the South. Not only has kudzu grown over anything in its path, including abandoned homes and telephone poles, as it moves along, its roots are digging into the soil, releasing the top carbon from the ground back into the atmosphere. Unfortunately, kudzu is not our only invasive species. There is also wisteria, Virginia creeper, English ivy, and Japanese honeysuckle, just to name a few. All these plants are digging into the soil and releasing carbon. Carbon is one of the gases that fuel greenhouse gas emissions. These gases make the earth warmer, which helps invasive species grow faster and stronger. These invasive species dig into the soil, release carbon, and heat the earth. Do you see the problem here? Invasive species and climate change are fueling each other, and the combination are only making things worse. Thankfully, the National Park Service is aware of the growing problems of climate change and invasive species. The National Park Service has developed Executive Order 13112. According to the order, the management of exotic plant species, including eradication, will be conducted wherever species threaten historic site resources or public health. So as climate change increases, you might find invasive plants showing up in your own backyard. Not only are invasive species found invading natural ecosystems, but they're also found in plant and landscaping nurseries. Since 80% of countries don't have laws against invasive species, it's important that we work together. While the National Park Service is doing their part, there are things you can do too. Conduct a bio-blitz of the plants in your yard. It's simple. Make a list of the plants you see in your backyard. Evaluate the plants and develop a plan to remove any invasive species out of your yard. Inform your parents about invasive species sold at nurseries and encourage them to buy native plants. Together, we can make a difference.